So I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress in 2008, so about 2 years after I got out of the service. And I remember getting the diagnosis and thinking that it didn't really sync up with my experience, right? And then later finding out that post-traumatic stress and how it's basically diagnosed is it's a symptom cluster. So if you are, you check the box out of, um, like 5 out of 10, symptoms, right? Then boom, you have post-traumatic stress, right? So what I understood about post-traumatic stress is, yes, I'm experiencing these symptoms, but it doesn't really resonate with me. It doesn't really feel right? The diagnosis didn't really feel right. So it wasn't until a few years later that I understood the concept of moral injury, which is the definition is witnessing or participating or failing to prevent acts that transgress your deeply held sense of right or wrong or your moral compass, right? You can think of it that way. So we're put in a situation in combat, right, where it's kill or be killed, essentially, what it comes down to. So you're faced with this challenge, and then, growing up, some of the ethics and morals instilled in me was that it's not okay to kill someone. And here I am in a situation where I have to violate that ethical boundary, essentially. So the way that I look at it is post-traumatic stress is a conditioning of the nervous system. So it's a physiological response to a dangerous situation. So there's nothing wrong with post-traumatic stress. It's actually signaling that your system is working properly, right? So if you're in a dangerous situation for a prolonged amount of time, your nervous system adapts to that situation to keep you alive, right? The challenge is when we come home from war, from these situations, we don't have anything to deregulate the nervous system, right? So we continue on this path of the body feels that it's in danger, which signals to the mind that it's in danger. So everything that you're witnessing in your life is through the lens of fight or flight, right? So life or death. All the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis are seen through that filter, right? So we know that post-traumatic stress is a normal response to an abnormal situation. So it's a physiological response, and the symptoms of that are post-traumatic stress, right? So flashbacks, hypervigilance, these things, insomnia, things that keep you alive in a combat zone, right? So moral injury comes into the picture. At least this is my perspective and how it's worked with me, is moral injury comes into the foreground and it runs parallel with post-traumatic stress, right? So you don't really understand it while you're in the dangerous situation because you're in fight or flight, right? But when you come back from that experience of war or combat, you start to think, were we justified in our actions, right? What did I participate in? Am I a good person? Can I be forgiven? Will my community accept me, right? If they've ever found out what I participated in. So these are the questions that are associated with moral injury, which is grief, guilt, shame, real core wounds to the soul. You can think of it that way, right? So you can think of them running parallel together. And what happens is, as the body understands that it's not in dangerous situations anymore, the symptoms of post-traumatic stress start to wane. But what ends up happening is the moral injury of the experience comes to the forefront. Now you might still have hypervigilance, flashbacks, stuff like that, but they're not as prominent. But the real challenge comes from the moral injury of the situation that you're in, right? And then you come to find out, we weren't there for weapons of mass destruction. You come to find out that we spent all this time training Iraqi National Guard, and then it just falls to ISIS, right? The whole city of Mosul was essentially destroyed. So you asking yourself, why did my friends die? What did they die for, right? So these are the moral injuries of war that are unseen, and if you don't have the verbiage to go with it, you can't really understand what's happening within you. So understanding that moral injury is, I think, the wound that we need to be talking about. I think if I knew about the concept of moral injury before deploying, or even understanding it after I got back, it would help me make sense of my deployment and all my experiences through that deployment better. because once you understand what something is, right, it gives you kind of a foothold to explore it even deeper, right? Because if you don't know what you don't know, and you know something's wrong, you're just kind of, as we say, lost in the sauce, right? You just don't know. It's a fog. You understand that there's something wrong with you. You understand that it's not normal. Well, normal, right? It's understanding that there's something going on with me, but I can't put my finger on it, and it's always there, and it's always just a constant in the background in my life. And when you don't have words to describe it, you just have to sit in that feeling, which takes, it just drains you of energy, right? You don't understand. If you don't understand what's going on within you, you're kind of getting tossed around quite a bit in life.
BrainLine is powered in part by Wounded Warrior Project to honor and empower post 9/11 injured service members, veterans, and their families. For more information about PTSD, please visit brainline.org. BrainLine is a service of WETA, Washington, D.C.